Independent Media Reports, May 2019. Roll 'em.
So, as we all know, white folks are quick to deny that racism is still a thing. We like to say that black folks are treated equally, just like white people, that discrimination is not really a problem and black people need to stop complaining. But the problem with that, there are actually a lot of problems with that, but one of the biggest ones is that we have literally been saying that forever. In other words, we were even saying that before civil rights laws were passed, when segregation was still a thing, when racism was obviously blatant, when everybody in retrospect would agree now that things weren't equal. We as white folks still believed that they were. Let me show you something. So I know you won't be able to read this. Don't worry, I'll blow it up in a second. Just wanted to show you the page. This is from a Gallup poll report that was published in 2001 that was tracing white racial attitudes and perceptions going back to the 1960s. And that one chart that was on the page that I just showed you a second ago asked white folks over the course of a 40-year period, do you believe that black people are treated equally in your community? The first time they asked that question was in 1963, the year before the Civil Rights Act was even passed, 2 years before the Voting Rights Act, 5 years before the Fair Housing Act. They asked white people, do you think blacks are treated equally in your community? And look at that dot right there. At the edge, 62%, almost 2/3 of white people, even before civil rights laws were passed, said, yeah, everything's fine. But it gets worse. Here's another page. This is a question that was asked in 1962 of white folks. Do you think that black children have the same chance as white children to get a good education in your community? Now, again, this is only 8 years after Brown v. Board ended formal segregation. It's long before school systems actually did anything to try to equalize educational opportunities. But what do you think white folks said, even in 1962? Well, there you have it. That's the far edge of the chart. Actually, I didn't size it correctly. You can't even tell. But above that, which says 83%, that was the national average. The white average was actually 85%. 85% of white folks in 1962 who said that black kids already had equal opportunity to get a good education with white kids. So I guess the lesson here is that maybe white folks' perceptions of whether or not racism and discrimination are a big deal probably aren't the best. Maybe we ought to not rely on our assumptions and instead ought to listen to what black people tell us, because if we didn't even think it was a problem before civil rights laws were passed, if we didn't even understand the need for the civil rights movement because, gosh, isn't everything already equal in America? It's pretty obvious that we're not the ones whose perceptions ought to be relied upon. Maybe we ought to listen to black folks because it's pretty obvious they understand their lived experience better than we understand their lived experience.
Well, and welcome to another day in the racist-ass United States. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about the globe, and we're going to talk about culture. Because there's one culture here, dear, that's under attack, and it's going to affect everyone, no matter where you live. Did you know that there's one culture that dominates the globe? Everything from the clothes that you wear, to the food that you eat, to the music that you listen to. One culture that dominates, baby. I mean, dominates. Black American culture. And it's under attack here in the US of A. And you might be thinking to yourself, what the fuck is this white girl talking about today? Who brought you jazz? Black Americans. Who brought you rhythm and blues? Black Americans. Who brought you soul? Black Americans. And this one's really gonna sting. Who brought you rock and roll? Black Americans did. In places like Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and Memphis, Tennessee. St. Louis, too. That was Black Americans who brought that to you. Rap, dear? Black Americans brought that everywhere. You can go all across the globe and you will find some soul food. Yes, you will, boo. Let's talk about the clothes that you wear, the way you do your hair, your makeup too, brought to you by Black American culture, boo. As a matter of fact, Black American culture and their fashion has reached the heights of Gucci, Versace, honey, name a house today. They look the way of Black American culture before the clothes are made. It is the most dominant culture on the globe, and it is under attack today by the mediocre ass white men here in the US of A. So if you think racism is just an American problem, baby, well, it could affect your style, your music, your hairdo, the food you fucking eat, and your freedom too. Because it was Black Americans, baby, that set the stage for civil rights for every fucking body across the globe today. I am so fucking tired of hearing people talk about my fellow Black Americans as if they haven't provided to us everything today. Everything. Hell, even the way you speak was brought to you by Black Americans. The slang you use, honey, was brought to you by Black American culture. All of it. Black American culture. And they deserve some respect for that. Because where the fuck would we be without it? Listening to dull-ass music, eating flavorless fucking food, and all dressed the same like we're in a fucking cult, boo. That's where you'd be without Black American culture. Trust me.
Debunking racist BS. Go back to Africa. Who? Go back to Africa. If that ain't the racists' favourite emergency button, I don't know what is. It's like the N-word, but stretched out into a sentence. Same hostility, just more syllables and worse grammar. Now let me be clear. This is not for everybody. This is for the specific individuals who actually use that phrase like it's clever. If that's not you, relax. If it is you, stay seated. First of all, nobody booked that trip. A whole lot of us were brought here. Shackled, sold, forced labour. That wasn't study abroad. That was a crime with sales. And some of us were already here. History is layered. This land has chapters people conveniently skip. Second, if black people actually packed up and left, America would immediately start malfunctioning. Music, gone. No jazz, no blues, no hip-hop, no R&B. Half your playlist would sound like elevator music in a tax office. Sports, the highlight reels would look like a company picnic. Slang, deleted. If you've said cool, lit, vibes, period, or copied a dance this month, cultural influence confirmed. Food, seasoning sales would collapse. National emergency declared over paprika. Innovation, traffic lights, blood bank advancements, home security systems, major medical breakthroughs. We've been building this place since it was plywood and unpaid overtime. So when you say go back to Africa, I'm confused. Because also, don't threaten us with a good time. Let's talk about Africa like it's 2026, not 1826. It's 54 countries, fastest growing youth population on Earth. By 2050, roughly 1 in 4 people on the planet will be African. Massive tech growth in Lagos and Nairobi. Mobile banking systems that transformed global finance. Global investment pouring in. Natural resources. Cultural influence. Expanding economies. You saying go back like it's exile. Somebody might say, okay, send the address. And here's the part that really makes me chuckle. History shows that when black communities build something thriving, eventually somebody wants in. Music, fashion, innovation, culture. So if we did go back and build something booming, it probably wouldn't take long before certain folks started Googling flights and asking about business visas. Not because you hate Africa, but because you can't resist growth. That's history talking. You don't hate where we're from. You hate that we succeed wherever we are. That's different. And let's be clear. We don't tell anybody to go back to Europe because immigration built America. America is a remix. But when we demand fairness, suddenly somebody wants to mute our verse. Here's the bottom line. We are just as American as anybody else. Fought in every war. Built major parts of the economy. Created culture the entire world copies. You can't build a house with somebody's labour, live in it for 200 years, and then tell them they don't belong. That logic don't logic. Debunked. Next.
So,
One of the lines that gets quoted to me the most from Scandal is Papa Pope's line, "You have to be twice as good to get half of what they have." And I think that that is because for Black people in this country, that isn't just a line from a show, that is our reality. And 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court showed us an example of why. So I want to help you understand this. In case you don't know, here's what happened. A while back, Louisiana's legislature was ordered by their courts to redraw their voting map so that Black voters had real representation. That sounds great, right? Good. So they drew a map that gave Black people a real chance to be represented in Congress in fair numbers. But now, the Supreme Court has ruled that that map is suddenly unconstitutional. And the thing is, the ruling doesn't just impact Louisiana. That decision gutted a key part of the Voting Rights Act, which is the law that has protected us, Black communities, from having our voting power drained away from us since 1965. Why am I talking about this? Okay, the midterms are coming. And there are people in power who are redrawing lots of maps to make our votes matter even less, to make it twice as hard for our voices to be heard and for people like us to be in power. So what do? I'm so glad you asked. And I know that you're going to save this post, you're going to text it to 4 friends, maybe 8 friends, because you got to be twice as good. Number 1, know your and by your I mean your district. Find out who represents you, because maps are being redrawn right now, and that answer may be about to change. So NAACP LDF, Democracy Docket, Black Voters Matter, they are all tracking this in real time, fighting back in the courts and in communities. Follow them. We'll help you follow them. Okay, now number 2, show up. Register to vote and bring your whole circle with you. School boards, city councils, state legislatures. That is where this fight is actually happening. I mean, the big splashy races, they matter, but these races, these local races, they need you for real. Number 3, make noise. You got to call your representatives. At 5 calls, they give you a script, they connect you directly, they make it easy. We'll help you find that. Number 4, share this video. We need everybody in this fight because they are counting on us being too tired and too confused and too defeated. They want us to think that we can't make a difference, so we have to prove them wrong, even if we have to work twice as hard to do it.
Just think of it this way. If you know that you didn't do anything, then why is it that you would be twisting members of your own party's arms, trying to get them not to release it? This would be exonerating. If you know that you are free and clear, then why not say, you know what, release the files? In fact, he campaigned on releasing the files because he didn't realize that anything that he was involved in whatsoever was involved in the files. But let me tell you something. Another thing that was said in that other email that he had with Michael Wolff was he was talking about if he wants to basically play hardball. We will make mention of the fact that he really has been on the plane, and I don't remember if it mentioned the island.
Let's actually put that email up just so our viewers can fully understand what it says. I just hope the control room can put this email up. It says, I think you should let him hang himself. And this is in response to a question of whether CNN would plan to ask Trump in a town hall about the relationship with Epstein. Epstein said, how do we craft an answer for him? And Michael Wolff says in this email, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime.
Yes.
That's a full email.
Yes, yes, yes. That is clear that Jeffrey Epstein had something to hang over his head. Why else or how else could you have a debt that you are able to? Now, exactly what it was, who knows, right? And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. But the fact that Trump does not want these files to be out, to me, says that he has more to hide than him actually being able to exonerate himself.
And then the other email talking about that we used initially, I'm just trying to find that email so I can be really precise here, but It talks about how Epstein is emailing Maxwell saying that Trump was with a victim at his house for several hours. This is an email from April 2nd, 2011. Republicans are saying that that victim is Virginia Giuffre. As you know, she died by suicide. She's been very outspoken. Jeffrey Epstein. Here's the email right here on your screen. She wrote a book, as you know, and she did not accuse him of any wrongdoing. What do you make of that? And can you confirm that?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's redacted who the victim is, so I won't necessarily take the Republicans' word on who it is that's redacted. And I don't know why they would necessarily redact someone's name who is deceased at this point.
The Democrats did that, though. The Democrats redacted.
No. I understand,
Okay,
but I'm just saying, like, our biggest concern is to actually make sure that we are protecting victims. And obviously, she wrote a book. She told her truth. Whether or not she told everything, who knows? Again, another person that we can't talk to because we have yet another side around this. So I think that that's actually one of the things that we should talk about is that the president has tried to call this all a hoax. I don't think you have this many people dying around a hoax. I don't think you have somebody trying to hide files around a hoax. We know that there's something there. We know that his own attorney general had to admit that he is in the files. But they are trying to hide stuff. The only reason that we have these emails is because we were able to get them from the estate. Not because the Department of Justice was releasing information, not because Kash Patel was releasing information, even though they've had subpoenas from the Oversight Committee for some time. Kash Patel continues to hold back information. So I thank God that there is somebody that still respects the law and still respects subpoenas in this country, but it's not the people that are in power to do it, the people that actually conducted the investigation. Imagine what we may discover if we got the investigatory information versus getting something from an estate.
Well, but we should also note that the head of the Oversight Committee is a Republican. It's Republican. The chairman is James Comer. And he is the one who is issuing these subpoenas.
Well, let's be clear about this.
Okay.
This is not something that he wanted to do. This was a subcommittee, remember? It has been the Speaker of the House who has consistently tried to avoid this by shutting down the House. So what the Speaker did is he sent us out on an early recess. But before we left, it was a subcommittee of the Oversight Committee that actually did the motion for the subpoenas, and the Democrats kept pushing, and some Republicans actually joined with the Democrats. This was not led by James Comer.
Like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know if she's on that subcommittee.
Okay.
But Nancy Mace is on that subcommittee for sure. She's actually the chair of that subcommittee. This subcommittee, the ranking member is Summer Lee. So it was that subcommittee. So this was actually the tail wagging the dog. I just want to be clear about that. And ultimately, the chairman had a vote that was bipartisan, that was the majority, and he had to do it. But whether or not they have been like slow rolling this, there is no question about the fact that they have.
And you have had Marjorie Taylor Greene, I believe Thomas Massey. It's been some Republicans who want the full floor vote on this.
Yeah, we've got 4. 4 out of the 219 Republicans, yes, in the House. The rest of them seem to be okay with being complicit with protecting pedophiles.
You know, it's interesting. A CNN poll from last July showed that 50% of Americans were feeling dissatisfied about the amount of information released on the Epstein case. Did that have any influence at all on your decision to make these emails public today?
No, I mean, ultimately what's happened is, obviously, again, we've not been getting anything from the DOJ. Instead, it's been the estate of Epstein. And so as they've been turning things over, it takes staff time to review those documents and things like that to make sure that we've got something, number one, of value to the public. There's still additional information. I want to be clear. We got way more than 3 emails. But in their cursory review, they were able to say, okay, here are 3 emails that we think are of value. We do anticipate that there will be more that they will find that will be of value. They will go through the redaction process. They will also consult with the Republicans before we release anything. So it takes a little bit of a process. But I will say, again, that the estate seemingly has been more participatory than our own Department of Justice, who we actually oversee.
Hey, I'm Ted King. It's May 18th, 2026. It's time for independent media. Roll 'em.
If Kamala Harris had become president of the U.S., Trump would be in prison, the Strait of Hormuz would be open, Ukraine would be victorious, gas would be under $3 a gallon, and the U.S. would still be respected and supported around the world. Similarly, in Georgia, if Democrats had been in control for the last 20 years instead of Republicans, our minimum wage would be $20 an hour, Medicaid would be expanded, we would have universal child care, we would have passed common sense gun reform a long time ago, numbers would be at the top in education, we would have a progressive tax system, and we wouldn't have this archaic 6-week abortion ban that's killing women all the time. Georgia, it's going to be up to us in November to save ourselves. Let's vote blue in the midterms.
You're asking today, how long will it take? Somebody's asking, how long will prejudice blind the visions of men? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, yes, sir, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth crushed earth will rise again. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. Yes, sir. Because no lie can live forever. Yes, sir.
Now this is cool. They blocked the street to walk. No black men moving.
You're right. Cousin, there when you left. You're right. Brother was there when you left.
Too cool.
There when you left. You're right.
They blocked the street.
Cousin, brother, sister was there when you
black men moving together. I love it.
Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, girls? Which side are you on? We fight for working families, our struggle's just begun. But we'll all stick together till every battle's won. Oh, which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on?
Hey everybody, I'm here in Montgomery, Alabama. We're getting ready to go stand up and fight against these racist redistricting maps that have been drawn down here in Alabama and across the South. And we're standing up and saying no to Jim Crow 2.0.
To Basil's point, they put it in writing, right? You are the one who studied Project 2025. Isn't all that's happening more about us as a country than it is about Donald Trump? America knew what it was voting for, and look what they got.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Trump has exploited the moral rot at the center of the American psyche for decades. You know, especially over the last decade as he walked in here. He's pulled out and appealed to the lower impulses of everyday Americans. He's now, as we see with his push on gerrymandering and the way he's attacked DEI, aka fundamental civil rights, he's been probably the most openly anti-black president in modern history, frankly. And what we see here, especially with this ruling, you know, there has been no clearer case made for the necessity of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 than how quickly these southern states immediately moved to wipe out and dilute black power. You have instantly, within hours, DeSantis signed those 4 additional seats that would take down black majority districts. You have Tennessee now last week wiping out a black majority district. You have Louisiana set to do the same. Alabama just got greenlit by SCOTUS to do the same. And then you have now, as Basil, you mentioned, Trump at the same time simultaneously almost unilaterally raising the black unemployment rate because people don't talk enough about how nearly 20% of the federal workforce was black before Trump walked into office. And it just so happens that this spike in unemployment happens to coincide with an assault on DEI, not just in the federal workforce, but in the private sector with his executive orders to basically get people to dissuade private sector folks to hire black people. And like you said, and unfortunately, you actually had me on for the first time I was ever on TV was Project 2025 segment with Ruth Ben-Ghiat in 2024. And we were talking about this and talking about the fact that in that paper, in that playbook, they were talking about DEI, they were talking about dismantling all of these rights. And right now we are living in the culmination of Leonard Leo's Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation's policy playbook vision, culminating here in this moment where black power is eroded. But I do think some of it is going to backfire. We could talk about that maybe later. But I think if you have to dilute your own districts in order to redraw some of these maps. So
the only silver lining to Project 2025 is we got to have you on TV and got to know you. Everybody.
Let me ask you a question. What happened to the Confederate soldiers after the Civil War? Answer the question. What happened to the Confederate soldiers, Confederate generals, the president of the Confederacy? What happened to everybody who seceded from the United States and then proceeded to attack the United States? The first shots of the Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter. The Confederacy fired on the North. And then after that war was over, what happened? Don't worry, I'll tell you. They went home. They went home, and then we proceeded to not do shit. Nothing to hold them accountable for what they did to commit treason against the United States. And then you know what they did when they went home? Do you know what they did when they went home? They taught their children their ideologies, and their children taught their children. In 1894, there was a group started called the United Daughters of the Confederacy. That's the group that is solely responsible for resurrecting Confederate statues across the South. The reason they did it was to remind black people where they were. That was their actual stated reasoning. They also rewrote textbooks. They didn't call it the Civil War. They called it the War of Northern Aggression. The battle flag of Northern Virginia, which is also known as the Southern Cross, that was also found on the second and third national flags of the Confederacy, was also resurrected by the United Daughters of the Confederacy. We call it the Confederate flag, aka the rebel flag. And it started flying all across the South. In fact, the first time that flag was flown inside the U.S. Capitol wasn't when the Confederacy invaded the U.S. during the Civil War, but it was on January 6, 2021. Now, why would a flag from the Civil War be walking through the halls of the Capitol on January 6, 2021? I'll tell you why. Because after the Civil War, the Confederacy just went home. We didn't do anything to hold them accountable, and they taught their children, who taught their children, who taught their children, who taught me, because I was raised that way. I was raised to believe heritage, not hate. I was raised to believe the Civil War was about states' rights, not about slavery. I was raised to believe that white people freed the slaves because we're such good white folk. I was raised to believe on all the propaganda that southern states taught their children after the Civil War. I was raised in a country that was governed by laws that were specifically written after the Civil War to give people rights, but just enough rights to maintain the mythology of white supremacy. The 13th Amendment ended slavery and involuntary servitude, but only if you weren't convicted of a crime. And then in 1866, the black codes were created. Vagrancy laws were created to make newly freed black people criminals, so they could be slaves again. The 14th Amendment's currently under attack by this administration. Why would the 14th Amendment, written after the Civil War, be under attack by an administration in 2026? Because after the Civil War, the Confederacy just went home and taught their children, who taught their children, who taught their children. We've been in a cold Civil War with the losing side of the Civil War since the Civil War ended. They lost, but they didn't give up. That's why they use the phrase, the South will rise again. I heard that my whole life. And the South will rise again means that they will take over the United States government because they lost the first time, and now they have. You need to understand, this problem is not Donald Trump. The problem is not just Stephen Miller. The problem is that while they prepared themselves from 1865 to present day to rise again, nobody took it seriously. And now that they have risen to the highest ranks of the government, now that they are rigging our elections, now that they have written out publicly a plan to maintain power for the next 100 years, you think we will simply vote them out in the midterms and all our fucking problems are solved. They are not the problem. They are a symptom of the problem that we have continued to ignore in this country for the better part of the entire existence of this country. The Confederacy controls the government. The mythology of white supremacy is making the rules. And I fear that we still don't see that and still don't have plans to hold the Confederacy, to hold white supremacy, to hold MAGA accountable. I fear that we think this is a single person problem, a single administration problem. I fear you don't understand what's actually happening in this country, and I fear you are not fucking mad enough. You are not alerted enough. All the 5 alarm bells. This is a 5 alarm bell, a 5 alarm bell. Everybody says this shit every fucking day, and I fear that not enough people truly grasp the gravity of what's actually fucking happening. The Confederacy went home and spent the last 160 years making a plan to rise again, and they succeeded. So now the question becomes, what the fuck are we going to do? Because electeds are not going to help us. Democrats don't know what the fuck they're doing. The power of the people has always been more powerful than the power of the people in charge. Wake up, America.
Before this nation was named, indigenous black peoples lived, built, and governed here. The great world's fairs were remnants of their cities. Across this nation once stood many centers of black commerce, not one Wall Street, but
Did you know 40,000 formerly enslaved people were given land, and then the government took it all back? January 12, 1865, Savannah, Georgia. General Sherman and Secretary of War Stanton met with 20 black ministers on the second floor of the Green Meldrum House. Reverend Garrison Frazier, 67 years old, spoke for the group. He said, "The way we can best take care of ourselves is to have land and turn it and till it by our own labor." 4 days later, Sherman issued Special Field Order 15. Set aside 400,000 acres of Confederate land from Charleston to Florida. Each black family would get 40 acres. No more than that. The Army would lend them mules. By June 1865, 40,000 formerly enslaved people had settled on 435,000 acres. They built houses, planted crops, created self-governing communities. One minister led 1,000 people to Skidaway Island and became the black governor. Then Lincoln was assassinated. April 15, 1865, Andrew Johnson became president. Fall 1865. Johnson overturned the order, returned the land to the Confederate planters who had declared war on the United States, despite objections from General Oliver Howard, head of the Freedmen's Bureau. 40,000 families evicted. Most became sharecroppers on the same land they'd been promised. Called it one of the biggest gotchas in American history. Follow for the promises they broke.
You can think of a people who were more held back, more deprived, more sabotaged than African Americans. You took everything away from them and took them away from everything. They started in your country at less than zero, literally regarded and treated as subhuman, not allowed to learn to read or write or anything for hundreds of years. But you see, they come from a people of accomplishment to one degree or another, not a people of piracy and theft and appropriation. They come from a people who created and built and developed in their own land. And even though you did everything that you could possibly do to suppress them, to hold them down, to hold them back, and you're still doing that until today, nevertheless, I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that African Americans have become a global cultural superpower. Culturally, they're a superpower. Whatever cultural soft power that America has in the global South, it's African American experience.
Fellow Americans, I am about to sign into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I want to take this occasion to talk to you about what that law means to every American. 188 years ago this week, a small band of valiant men began a long struggle for freedom. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, not only to found a nation, but to forge an ideal of freedom, not only for political independence, but for personal liberty, not only to eliminate foreign rule, but to establish the rule of justice in the affairs of men. That struggle was a turning point in our history. Today, in far corners of distant continents, the ideals of those American patriots still shape the struggles of men who hunger for freedom. This is a proud triumph. Yet those who founded our country knew that freedom would be secure only if each generation fought to renew and enlarge its meaning. From the Minutemen at Concord to the soldiers in Vietnam, each generation has been equal to that trust. Americans of every race and color have died in battle to protect our freedom. Americans of every race and color have worked to build a nation of widening opportunities. Now, our generation of Americans has been called on to continue the unending search for justice within our own borders. We believe that all men are created equal, yet many are denied equal treatment. We believe that all men have certain unalienable rights, yet many Americans do not enjoy those rights. We believe that all men are entitled to the blessings of liberty, yet millions are being deprived of those blessings, not because of their own failures, but because of the color of their skin. The reasons are deeply embedded in history and tradition and the nature of man. We can understand without rancor or hatred how this all happened, but it cannot continue. Our Constitution, the foundation of our republic, forbids it. The principles of our freedom forbid it. Morality forbids it. And the law I will sign tonight forbids it. That law is the product of months of the most careful debate and discussion. It was proposed more than 1 year ago by our late and beloved President, John F. Kennedy. It received the bipartisan support of more than 2/3 of the members of both the House and the Senate. An overwhelming majority of Republicans, as well as Democrats, voted for it. It has received the thoughtful support of tens of thousands of civic and religious leaders in all parts of this nation. And it is supported by the great majority of the American people. The purpose of this law is simple. It does not restrict the freedom of any American so long as he respects the rights of others. It does not give special treatment to any citizen. It does say the only limit to a man's hope for happiness and for the future of his children shall be his own ability. It does say that there are those who are equal before God shall now also be equal in the polling booths, in the classrooms, in the factories, and in hotels and restaurants and movie theaters and other places that provide service to the public. I am taking steps to implement the law under my constitutional obligation to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. First, I will send to the Senate my nomination of Leroy Collins to be Director of the Community Relations Service. Governor Collins will bring the experience of a long career of distinguished public service to the task of helping communities solve problems of human relations through reason and common sense. Second, I shall appoint an advisory committee of distinguished Americans to assist Governor Collins in his assignment. Third, I am sending Congress a request for supplemental appropriations to pay for necessary costs of implementing the law and asking for immediate action. Fourth, already today, in a meeting of my cabinet this afternoon, I directed the agencies of this government to fully discharge the new responsibilities imposed upon them by the law, and to do it without delay and to keep me personally informed of their progress. Fifth, I am asking appropriate officials to meet with representative groups to promote greater understanding of the law and to achieve a spirit of compliance. We must not approach the observance and enforcement of this law in a vengeful spirit. Its purpose is not to punish. Its purpose is not to divide, but to end divisions, divisions which have lasted all too long. Its purpose is national, not regional. Its purpose is to promote a more abiding commitment to freedom, a more constant pursuit of justice, and a deeper respect for human dignity. We will achieve these goals because most Americans are law-abiding citizens who want to do what is right. This is why the Civil Rights Act relies first on voluntary compliance, then on the efforts of local communities and states to secure the rights of citizens. It provides for the national authority to step in only when others cannot or will not do the job. This Civil Rights Act is a challenge to all of us to go to work in our communities and our states, in our homes and in our hearts, to eliminate the last vestiges of injustice in our beloved country. So, tonight I urge every public official, every religious leader, every business and professional man, every working man, every housewife, I urge every American to join in this effort to bring justice and hope to all our people and to bring peace to our land. My fellow citizens, we have come now to a time of testing. We must not fail. Let us close the springs of racial poison. Let us pray for wise and understanding hearts. Let us lay aside irrelevant differences and make our nation whole. Let us hasten that day when our unmeasured strength and our unbounded spirit will be free to do the great works ordained for this nation by the just and wise God, who is the Father of us all. Thank you and good night. Hi, Joe.
Manny, Speaker McCormick first. Speaker first. Thank you. I'll be out of your way. I think we ought to move out. Yeah, my friend. Good vote, you thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, we did better today than we did the other day. Bill? Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations. Thank you for everything. History there. Manny? Well, I think Manny, should we move out? Tommy. 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 Attaboy. Yeah? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Let's go this way. Bill?
Charlie, you got one?
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. I appreciate your Thank you, Mr. President. Pick up one of those. The president does the job. Come, please.
The recent Supreme Court decision in Louisiana versus Calais effectively killed the last remaining provision of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was authored by Justice Samuel Alito, but it represents the life's work of Chief Justice John Roberts. The Roberts Court has now gutted the Voting Rights Act on 3 different occasions, and Roberts wrote or joined every one of those opinions. And that's not an accident. Roberts has been trying to kill the Voting Rights Act for more than 40 years, and it looks like he's finally succeeded. Roberts' crusade against the Voting Rights Act dates back to the early 1980s, when he was a young lawyer in Ronald Reagan's Justice Department. The Reagan administration was locked in a fight with Congress over whether to reauthorize parts of the Voting Rights Act and how strong the Voting Rights Act should be. Roberts took the position that the Voting Rights Act should be as weak as possible. Roberts claimed the Voting Rights Act would lead to a quota system in all areas, essentially comparing the law to affirmative action in the voting process. Roberts actually lost that fight in the early 1980s. The Congress overwhelmingly reauthorized and strengthened the Voting Rights Act with strong bipartisan support. But Roberts resurrected his crusade against the Voting Rights Act when he became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in 2005. Roberts claimed in his confirmation hearings that the constitutionality of the Voting Rights Act was a settled question. But once he got on the bench, he quickly got to work in dismantling the country's most important civil rights law. In the 2013 decision, Shelby County versus Holder, Roberts wrote the majority opinion, ruling that states with a long history of discrimination no longer had to approve their voting changes with the federal government. He claimed that things had changed dramatically in the South. But in the wake of his decision, 31 states have passed more than 115 new voter suppression efforts. Roberts claimed in the Shelby County decision that his opinion in no way affected the other major part of the Voting Rights Act, Section 2, which banned racial discrimination in voting nationwide. But the Roberts Court quickly started attacking that part of the law as well. In the 2021 case Brnovich versus DNC, authored by Alito and joined by Roberts, the Roberts Court made it much harder for voters of color to challenge discriminatory voting laws. And then in the recent Louisiana versus Calais decision, the Roberts Court struck down a second majority black congressional district in Louisiana and imperiled majority-minority districts all across the country, leading potentially to the largest drop in black representation since the end of Reconstruction. They have now narrowed Section 2 and the Voting Rights Act overall to the point of irrelevance. The defining cause of Roberts and the Roberts Court has been rolling back the civil rights revolution of the 1960s. And it's clear they're not going to moderate on this issue anytime soon. That's why, if you want to protect civil rights in America, we have to have a new Supreme Court.
The man is a dictator. He knows nothing about what he talks about. You're not helping me. Believe me, you're not helping me. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start doing your representation of us.